going on. And what does this mean for you all, especially in trying to amplify the voices of folks who typically haven't been at the table, or even in the room to have conversations?
Yeah, there's been a big push. I've been speaking about this and talking about this in tech for so long. We know that there's only, 3% of Black people in tech and only like 4% of Latinx people in tech. And those are including the service worker numbers, you know what I'm saying? So those aren't the people who actually hold, high-level positions. You'll see a lot of people in tech that are working at the most entry-level positions, but you won't see any people of color in those upper rungs. So it's very disheartening. I can say that it has been amazing to see, a lot of the companies come out and make their, public equity statement. But you know me, I'm not about words. I can care less what you say.
You want actions. What are you doing?
Exactly. I can care less what you say. Show me. I don't, all that talking means nothing. And if you're not putting budget behind it, if you're not putting money and resources behind it, then you're not authentic about it. Because we all know that progress follows the money.
Yeah.
Especially in, any organization. So it's been, it has been great to see that, some of these companies are actually starting to, realize this. But for me, a lot of it is just pandering to, the current climate. They're not really, as we say, about that life. They're not really ready to invest in this, racial equity issue that we have. They're not. And then if they are doing things that are great, it's what I call equity offset. They'll use what they're doing good for not racial equity, but for social corporate responsibility, right? They'll use that to offset racial equity. So I call it equity offset because what they're doing is saying we're doing this good and using that as an excuse to not do better in this area. And, I'm not here for that, and I'll call you out on that every time. And when I see organizations doing that, I call them out. Let's have a conversation. This is what you're doing wrong. Let's talk about it.
And part of that is they don't always have people at the table to be able to speak into what that looks like, and not always thinking about the return on investment financially. And having folks at the table who can help them see that the investment is in people and not always necessarily looking at profit. And so when you don't have people, in these spaces speaking up, then that's when you see just the empty statements. But you've been speaking up for a long time, and even in your job title, you're like an evangelist. Talk about some ways in which you've been doing that in the tech space and calling folks out, and how have you done that with the companies that you're working with to make those places more inclusive for people of color to get into the tech world?
Yeah, so, it's hard. I tell people of color this all the time, like, we all have a fear, right? If we have a good job, we don't want to lose it. So if we say something or do something wrong, we know we're the first person to go, right? So there's always this inherent fear of, do I say something? Do I speak up? Do I, take a stand against this? And I've never been one to bite my tongue, and I've been able to use my platform to do just that, and that's a privilege of mine, and I understand that. Like, that's a privilege that I have, to be able to speak out and speak against these things without that repercussion of being fired or, losing my income, because that's one of the things that I'm known for. So I realize that that's a privilege, but without having someone in those rooms speaking up and calling people on their shit. I'm sorry, their stuff.
You can say it. Go ahead.
we won't see any progress. We see organizations hiring, directors of diversity and inclusion, or, head people of, equity, or whatever the titles are, to lead their organization. But the problem is that they're hiring these individuals, but these individuals have no power. They have no power to make any type of change. And their positions are such as that they're just put in those positions to fill a status quo and to make the organization feel like they're doing something valuable, right? And it's not about the actions that they're taking. So they go through these DEI, these little DEI trainings that are primarily done by these white organizations that really have no clue. So it's really just a front. And I love one thing that you told me before, like, they're just window dressings. They're just there to look pretty. They're there to look pretty and to serve that purpose, but they have no power behind them. And I refuse, in my role, to be in any situation where I don't have any type of power to make things happen. In any organization that I go to, that if I were to leave my current organization, like, that's a conversation that we would have, and I would need to report to someone who's on the leadership team who has the power to make moves. Yes. Without someone like that backing you, you won't get anywhere.
And it goes back to but you're right. It goes back to the conversation that I always talk to young women about, is having sponsors. So often we focus on mentors, and nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have people in your network who you can, speak to and truth, and that they aren't willing to back you and open up doors for you, that's not always a good place to be in. And I'm often pushing young women, get sponsors, look for allies, and in my words, co-conspirators. It's not always just getting people to be allies. I need you to do more than that. You need to co-create together. Exactly.
I call them, I like co-conspirators, but I call them my accomplices. Like, you're willing to accept a level of risk on my behalf. So I 100% agree with that. I've had tons and tons of sponsors. I still do. It's important to build your network. It's important to build your network authentically. And that's how you gain those sponsors. That's in the background. When you're not even in the room, they're speaking about you. They're speaking up for you to other people in that room, to leaders, to X. They see you. They see the work that you're putting in, and they know that that you're gonna do good. So I 100% agree with that. Like, I call them coaches, mentors, and sponsors. And you have to know, like, which one, like, which identity is assigned to which person that you're dealing with.
Talk more about that. How do you figure that out? That's good.
Yeah. So I do a lot of talks, and it was one of the topics a few years back about, like, a lot of the young women were like, how do you find a mentor? Like, how do you engage? Da, da, da. And I was like, well, that's not even the half of it. There's people that play different roles in your life. And there are people that are there for a season, and there are people that are there for the long run. But you have to know, who they, like, what persona they have or what personality they have, and understand that. So a coach is someone who's in your corner that's rah, rah, rah. That's telling you to go get it, go after it. You got it. They're feeding that ego, that part of you that's like, I'm hungry. I got to go get it. You think about it as like basketball, football coach yelling at you, like, you can do it, go get it, building your confidence and making you feel invincible. That's what a coach is. That's someone who you tell something to, like, oh, I'm up for this job promotion or interview, and they, sending you text messages and, emails saying you're going to be great, all these things. That's a coach. That's someone who is in your corner and ready to root for you. Your sponsors, as we talked about, are the ones you may not even know actually that you're a sponsor. Some of them you know, some of them you don't. But they are typically in the background. They see your work. They know that you do good work, and they're telling everyone else about you. They're sponsoring you. They're saying, oh no, she's good. He's good. He does this. I worked on a project with him or her on this, and they do excellent work, or, you know, they'll be excellent for this position, and etc. That's a sponsor. A mentor, as we all know, is, you know, someone who's going to help you at different points in your career, maybe helping you with resumes, maybe helping you, you know, doing some, maybe they have a position that you want and they are helping mentor you to get to that position. But those mentors are more hands-on, where I figure coaches can be hands-on, but not all the time. And sponsors are definitely not really hands-on.
That is awesome information for people to be aware of the differences and identifying what those look like in your life. You know, I could have you on, and I'm saying this to a number of folks, but I mean it. I'm like, I got to bring y'all back because the knowledge that you're dropping is so inspiring and so important. And there is so much more to you, Shauna, that we didn't even get a chance to tap into. But I want to, before we close, I want people to be able to know how to get in touch with you. So how can they follow you and find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn. Shauna Hughes, my name is spelled a little different, so SHONNAH, HUGHES, or you can look me up by the moniker Sassy Sister, SAASYSISTAH, and that's on LinkedIn and Twitter. And those are my main platforms, LinkedIn and Twitter. You can find me, and I also have a website, SassySister.com.
Well, I just want to say thank you for being on the show. And this, again, is another episode of The Tapestry. I'm Dr. Francois Booker Drew. And feel free to reach out to both of us. This is about empowering women and telling our stories. And hopefully you are getting some amazing information through this podcast. So, Shauna, thanks again.